Those were 6 crushers deleted with 1 grenade in an instant. That is Arc Lightning, and most people probably have no idea how deep this mechanic actually goes. Because here's the thing that surprised me the most when I actually looked under the hood. Arc Lightning doesn't work like any other chain lightning effects you've seen before. In fact, it breaks one of the most basic assumptions you'd have about it. By the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why that clip happened and how you can make it happen for yourself consistently. This guide is built upon the knowledge of Cooley's awesome guides, so I'll leave a link in the description if you want to check things out for yourself. Now let's get started. Arc Lightning is brand new to Darktide, and right now it's exclusive to the Skitarii. The basic idea is simple. It finds a target, then jumps to nearby enemies, damaging and staggering each one. Classic chain lightning behavior, or so you'd think. But hold that thought. Right now, there are 5 ways to create Arc Lightning as a Skitarius, and they each play a very different role. The Arc Grenade is the nuclear option. Maximum chains, maximum range, maximum chaos. You can wipe out a gigantic mass of enemies with a single one, and it also uniquely prioritizes armored elites above all else. The Arc Maul is your close range specialist. Brutal strikes delivering a heavy dose of shocking crowd control, this weapon can potentially make you feel like Thor with Mjolnir. The Arc Rifle is a lightning cannon, allowing you to blast enemies with a continuous barrage of lightning, shredding both armored and unarmored enemies effortlessly. Then there are the 2 talent sources, Voltaic Arcs and Voltaic Resistance, which you can think of the passive engines running in the background, adding arc chains on top of whatever you're already doing. They all share the same basic DNA, but their individual stats are where things get interesting. Every source of arc lightning shares 4 core parameters, and once you understand these, everything else falls into place. First is arc chains. Think of these as the number of lightning bolts you're firing at once. Each one needs to land on a root target first before the chaining begins. More chains means more enemies getting hit simultaneously. Then you have jump angle. This is how wide the lightning searches for its next target. A narrow angle means it struggles in open spaces where enemies are more spread out, while a wider angle makes searching for enemies much more easier. Jump radius is how far it can reach for the next target. Too far apart and the chain breaks. Pack them tight and it keeps going. And finally, max jumps. How many times each chain can keep bouncing before it stops. These 4 numbers together determine whether your arc lightning fizzles out after one hit or tears through an entire squad. Here is a table from Cooley's guide that shows you the different parameters for each of the different arc lightning sources and how they perform. An important thing to note here is that arc lightning from the arc maul and arc rifle will only jump if there's a valid enemy that has the electrocution debuff applied to them already. That means these weapons are in a way limited to how far they can jump depending on the number of electrocuted enemies within your jump angle and radius. For example, without anything primed with electrocution, the first hit will only hit one target, doing nothing but applying the electrocution debuff on them. The next hit on them causes the attack to arc lightning, jumping to a nearby target and dealing both damage and applying the electrocution effect as well. The third hit will now jump between the earlier targets and now to a third one, which also damages and electrocutes them. This keeps going on until it runs out of jumps or a new target is acquired. The table also shows you that the arc grenade is one of the most powerful sources of arc lightning, capable of creating up to 6 chains across a very wide search radius and jumping as much as 5 times. This means a single arc grenade can theoretically hit up to 30 enemies at once. On the other hand, if you have just enough enemies who are close enough to each other, you can create a chain reaction where each enemy is getting hit by multiple streams of arc lightning, causing them to take a massive amount of damage in an instant. That is what you see happen at the start of the video where the bunch of crushers just evaporate. The other sources of arc lightning usually only produce a single chain, but with some supporting nodes, this can be increased to further improve the number. Do note that the enhanced Voltaic Arc's blessings only affect the arc lightning jumps for the weapon it's on and not the other sources. This effect becomes even stronger because arc lightning doesn't behave the way you would normally expect chain lightning to. Here's the thing I promised you at the start. Almost every chain lightning effect you've ever used in any game follows the same rules. The further it travels or the more it jumps, the weaker it gets. That's just how chain lightning works. But not here. In Darktide, arc lightning actually either maintains its damage throughout the jumps or actually increases in damage. Here's the damage table from Cooley's guide to show you what the exact damage output looks like. As you can see, the arc grenade hits the hardest, dealing 1000 damage throughout its chains and jumps. This means that if a target is unfortunate enough to get hit by multiple different arcs at once, they can be instantly bursted down like what you saw at the start of the video. On the other hand, the arc lightning from the arc maul and the arc rifle actually increases in damage as it jumps, and unlike the other two sources, can deal critical damage if the attack that proc the effect is also a critical hit. It's not that high of a multiplier at around 30% or so, but more damage is more damage. Also notice that while bracing the arc rifle, you actually get an extra jump, not only allowing you to hit one more target, but it also means your damage ramps up against that extra target as well. Lastly, voltaic arcs and voltaic resistance, that is the supporting node for either the voltaic emitter and refraction emitter respectively, deals a flat amount of arc lightning damage like the arc grenade, but not nearly as high. Relating to its damage output, I also want to talk about the armor damage modifiers for the arc lightning. As you can imagine, each source also has a different number attached to it. Broadly speaking, most arc sources will maximize its damage at around 20% extra rending or brittleness. This pushes up the ADM values to about as close to 1 as possible without needing any more, and at this point, you're essentially doing full damage. The only exception to this are from arc rifles. It has intrinsically lower ADM values compared to the rest and benefits from having 40% extra rending or brittleness. This means continuously blasting an enemy with the System Shock talent is going to be very beneficial for its damage output. If you want to learn more about how rending and brittleness works in Darktide, you can refer to my explanation video that I'll link in the description. So, with everything you've just learned about arc lightning, how do you actually make the most of it? All of this theory means nothing if you don't actually know how to put it to use. So let me show you. The first is positioning. As you can already tell, overlapping as much of the jump radii from multiple arc lightning streams is how you get the huge burst damage numbers on enemies. Of course, this can only be done with the arc grenade and the arc lightning from talents since they have multiple streams, but it does mean reading the situation in front of you is important. When it comes to the arc grenade, the best case scenario is that there are between 4 to 6 enemies that are close together but are spread between at least 2 different rows. This is an example of what that might look like, and if you manage to toss a grenade in the middle of them, many of the jump radii of the arc lightning will be overlapping enough that all of them get hit several times and they die instantly. Sometimes, even if they are in a row, the arc lightning might have just enough reach to chain across all of them, letting you wipe them out as well. Technically speaking, the worst time to use an arc grenade is actually when there are too many enemies. This causes your arcs to spread out too thinly, or if there are too few enemies, you don't get enough arcs to chain and jump, and so you lose out on burst damage. This is, of course, if you're trying to get as many kills on a really tanky enemy like maulers and crushers in an instant, and represents the ideal situation. Realistically, if you see 20 rages or maulers in front of you, chucking an arc grenade is going to give you good value no matter what. The other thing you need to keep in mind relates to the arc maul and arc rifle. Remember that for the arc lightning to trigger on these weapons, they must have enemies that are primed with electrocution to actually jump. This means that usually the first hit or two isn't really going to be doing much in generating arc lightning, especially for the arc maul, which needs to spend charges to activate the jumps. However, you can leverage your abilities to actually help the process. Voltaic emitter, for example, can immediately prime a bunch of enemies in front of you to receive their full arc lightning jumps for a brief moment. Without it, you'd first need to start bashing enemies to build up the electrocution debuff, and then it will start to chain arc lightning. But by priming them with voltaic emitter first, you can clear enemies a great deal faster without having to spend as many charges to do so. All of this, the positioning, the chaining, the electrocution priming, it all feeds into the builds I've been putting together. And some of them do things with arc lightning that I didn't expect going in. That will be in the videos to come. Subscribe so you don't miss it, and if this video helped, a like goes a long way. See you in the next one. Varlets.